Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. The new wave of global anti-Semitism is reaching into every corner of society and social media. The Boycott, Divest and Sanctions movement has even made strides in the form of a cultural boycott of Israel, stoking fears of growing anti-Semitism within the entertainment community. Entertainers such as Roger Waters, Lorde, and Miss Lauryn Hill have endorsed the boycott campaign, while many others, including Helen Mirren and John Bon Jovi, have condemned it. Are artists a driving force in rising anti-Semitism, or are they being used as pawns to spread hate? Does Hollywood legitimize anti-Semitism? Thank you for joining me today on Focus on Israel. I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating and sharing the message of Christian biblical responsibility to the people and land of Israel in the face of a growing global anti-Semitism. PJTN was birthed to stop the silence and alert Christians and all people of conscience to the reality of a world set on destroying Israel and the Jewish people. Since 2005, PJTN has fought against this hate and will always resist those who stand against the plan of God. Boycott activists recently worked unsuccessfully to stop the Eurovision Song Contest from being held in Israel. Thankfully, there's an organization that fights against this hate-driven agenda and educates entertainers and entertainment organizations about what BDS truly stands for: the destruction of the Jewish state. Liberate Art fights the cultural boycott campaign against Israel and connects members of the entertainment community with Jewish and pro-Israel organizations. Lana Mellman heads up Liberate Art and is a leader in combating the cultural boycott against Israel. A 20-year veteran in the entertainment industry, Lana has spoken with over 1,000 artists and/or their representatives and was instrumental in preventing numerous cancellations of scheduled concerts and tours in Israel. She recently circulated a statement in support of Israel's right to defend herself, signed by over 300 Hollywood luminaries, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, Seth Rogen, Kelsey Grammer, Sylvester Stallone, and Sarah Silverman. She also hosted a celebrity anti-BDS panel discussion featuring musician Alan Parsons. During my visit with her in Los Angeles, I learned a great deal about the pressure exerted against artists who perform in Israel, as well as Israeli artists who perform in other countries. So it's great to see you, great to have this time to spend with you.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, so Lana, tell us about yourself and your own journey into evolving into this whole movement to confront this, the issue of cultural boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the state of Israel.
Well, this work combines the two great passions in my life, outside of my friends and family, and that is my love of Israel and my love of the entertainment field. I have spent my entire adult career in the entertainment world. I started off as an entertainment lawyer. I worked as a business affairs negotiator. I was a creative executive at both the network and studios, and I also wrote and produced.
Wow.
So I have a huge background in the arts. I feel it's incredibly important. I think they enrich life for all of us, and they're a great connector between people and places. I think they help us understand each other better.
Right.
And then I also have this profound love of Israel. And that really started with my very strong connection with my family, particularly my mother and my mother's side of the family. And I had a very strong sense that of being part of a tribe when I was growing up, knowing that we were all connected and that, you know, we were moving through life together. And then when I was around 9-ish, my mom told me the story of the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
And she told me this, you know, horrifying tale that ended with the miracle of Israel. And it was as if my DNA changed. I just understood on a very profound level that this tribe that I belong to is much bigger. And that as Jews we share a common destiny in a great many ways. So then in around 2011, just when the cultural boycott campaign really started heating up, I decided to switch gears and take the contacts I had made, all of the skill sets I had developed, and combine it to fight and defeat the cultural boycott campaign against Israel. The cultural boycott is part of one aspect of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign against Israel. And it's often known by the acronym BDS, right? Okay, so B stands for boycott, and these people are advocating for an economic boycott of Israel, academic, cultural, and sporting competitions. The D stands for divestment, which means that they want all of the financial institutions and pension funds to divest and not, invest in Israel businesses.
Right.
And then there's sanctions, which is something that you are very much aware of, and where they're advocating for international forums to single out Israel for sanctions, right? The Democratic Liberal Society of Israel for sanctions. It's outrageous. Right. The question is, how do you get the world to isolate a country, an open liberal democracy? And their goal is to demonize Israel to such an extent that the world feels justified in isolating it and turning a blind eye at its destruction. One of the things that all dictatorships have in common is that they all try to control the distribution of art, right?
Interesting.
Because that's how they control thought. And artists need two things to thrive. They need the freedom to create, but also the freedom to share. So what these dictatorships always do in order to control their people and get them to do what they want them to do is that they control and censor distribution. Well, if you look around today, the only groups and entities that are fostering this kind of censorship and an attempt to control the distribution of art is other, totalitarian regimes and BDS, right? That's where you're seeing it. So one of the things that makes the cultural boycott so incredibly dangerous is that it uses the celebrity of artists to disseminate misinformation and lies about Israel. The millenniums today, and there are fabulous statistics on there and they're staggering, something like 70% of millenniums get their information online, right?
Absolutely.
And they get it from social media. And millenniums are fascinated with celebrity and the world of entertainment. They love films, they love music. So these anti-peace, anti-Israel groups use the celebrity of the artists in order to communicate misinformation. And I just want to explain a little bit about how it works, okay? What that's the strategy is to use the artists. But the tactics are such. So let's say a musician, the Rolling Stones, Rihanna, or even like a lesser known jazz musician
Right.
wants to go to Israel. And by the way, it's very important to note that hundreds of musicians and artists go to Israel every single year to share their art with their Israeli fans.
Isn't that something?
So when they decide to book a concert and the news gets out, and the news has to get out because you're advertising.
Correct. You've got to
right?
use media to promote.
You have to use media to do
promotion.
that.
Right.
What they'll do is they'll launch a multifaceted campaign urging that particular artist to cancel their upcoming performance. They'll use something as old-fashioned as email.
Right.
They'll call the representatives. They write blogs that get picked up by mainstream media. When an argument erupts, then it gets picked up by mainstream media as well, and it goes global.
Right.
And of course, there's social media. And social media reaches an audience that, other kinds of online publications don't reach.
Right.
You're reaching a vast, vast audience. So the way they do it, they issue the call, and the tactic is they accuse Israel of horrendous crimes against humanity, which are completely false. And then in their campaign, they say to the artists, if you keep your concert date in Israel, that means you support these hellacious crimes against humanity. So what they are doing is that they are slandering the Israeli people, all 7+ million of them, as well as the individual artists. They are calling the artists racist and supporters of apartheid and supporters of genocide, all of which is an outrageous lie. And that gets the attention of a group of people around the world, particularly millennials, who follow news about celebrities, right? The goal is really twofold. The first thing is that what people think about is getting a cancellation, pressuring an artist to cancel.
Correct.
Very few do, by the way. I was personally involved when Alicia Keys was scheduled to perform in Israel. And it was probably one of the ugliest campaigns I've ever seen. It made the news all the time. Alice Walker issued an open, who's the author of The Color Purple, issued an open letter asking her soul sister not to perform in apartheid Israel, which of course it is not apartheid. That's a complete falsehood. And all of her representatives were bombarded. They took a petition and they marched up to the charity that she supports, which saves the lives of children. And they made a big to-do and got coverage about presenting that. It was unbelievably intense. And I worked with her representatives and helped them understand some of the stuff that was going on in social media, some of a lot of it was being orchestrated and wasn't, original, authentic in any way. And ultimately, she issued a wonderful statement to the New York Times, focusing on the universality of music and its ability to create peace. Another person where I worked very, very closely with was Scarlett Johansson's publicist. Scarlett Johansson was the representative of SodaStream. They have a wonderful, wonderful business. They had one of their factories was in the West Bank. They provided all of their Arab employees.
Now this is SodaStream is an Israeli-owned company.
Yes. So at the same time, she was the ambassador for Oxfam. And it got an Oxfam International. There's a lot of different Oxfam's, right, got basically threw her under the bus.
Oh, no.
Very, very publicly. They made, threatened to withdraw her ambassadorship. It was a nightmare. So I was up to 1 o'clock in the morning talking to the publicist, providing him with information, finding out how she felt, where she was with this. She's a remarkable woman, by the way, very strong-willed, very determined, and she took the bull by the horns, and basically she divorced Oxfam. She said, "You don't get to fire me, I quit."
Good for her,
right? And then she made a wonderful statement about SodaStream, and she kept her her sponsorship of it, and it was and it aired on Super Bowl. So the publicity around it was through the roof.
This factory was in an area that was providing jobs for Arabs. Talk a little bit about that.
Great jobs for Arabs. They were integrated in all levels of the company, from the the highest level management.
Right.
They were the best paid people in the neighborhood. They had plentiful jobs. They, transportation was provided for them. It was kind of like the exact role model of what the world claims it wants to see. Arabs and Jews working side by side in friendship and working together to create this environmentally, wonderful product. And yet it didn't matter. It didn't matter to the people who supported BDS that the closure of this factory would mean the loss of real jobs for Palestinian people. So in addition to that, which is directly involved, that's basically kind of defense work. And I did a lot of that, particularly before I started my new company, which is Liberate Art. And what I do now, I very much go on the offense. And I provide a platform for artists and celebrities to speak out about their support of Israel and their stance against BDS. So part of what I do is I change the conversation and invite people to examine the morality and ethics and the impact on them personally of the BDS tactics. And there are lots of musicians and artists of all kinds who find this repugnant, and they need a platform to speak out. So one of the most recent success stories for Liberate Art is that we created and put together the first ever celebrity anti-BDS panel. It was fantastic. We had major icons from feature films. We had Alan Parsons, who was personally attacked by Roger Waters for going personally and publicly attacked by Roger Waters for keeping his date in Israel. We had an actor, a very well-established actor, Mark Pellegrino, come. We had an Israeli musician, and we had one entertainment lawyer, because I thought it was a good perspective. But it was really a platform for them to speak out. I have videotaped artists making statements. And one of the ways that's so important for Liberate Art to grow is to get the funding and support to make more of these videos of more and more popular artists going on camera and answering these questions straight on, expressing their feelings. And it's very important for people to know that very few artists support the boycott.
I want to take you to Israel in pictures and film. I want you to see how God's sovereign hand can be seen before our eyes right here in this land. That's why PJTN is offering a special anniversary package that includes a captivating new book and award-winning DVD. Israel Rising is a unique visual story of Israel's miraculous journey from unforgiving desert to thriving nation. Thousands of years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold a future time in which the arid land of Israel would come alive for its people. Now this breathtaking book documents the fulfillment of this vision, as rarely seen photographs from the 1880s to the 1940s are juxtaposed with recent photos of the same locations. This book will inspire and captivate you as it illuminates Israel's foretold awakening in a new and unforgettable way. In addition, you'll receive the award-winning documentary, Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. This inspiring film examines the many political twists and turns that make Israel the world's most controversial nation. From Abraham and the Promise to the issues facing the Jewish state today, the film examines the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical foundations for the modern state of Israel. This is a limited time offer for these two remarkable resources for just a one-time gift of $70 today. Your generous donation will help ensure that PJTN stays on the front lines and in the headlines of all the important issues facing Israel and our Jewish brethren. So please go to pjtn.org today. From studying history, it's very clear that what starts with the Jews never ends only with the Jews. We must strongly stand against any anti-Semitic trends, for if not stopped, they'll cause harm to all of us, and we'll witness the downfall of our Judeo-Christian Western culture. Today, many people say there's no longer a need for a Jewish state, that Jews around the world no longer need a place of refuge. But anyone who has heard recent statistics about the worldwide rise in anti-Semitism would never make such a claim. The reality is that neo-Nazi groups and Nazi sympathizers are increasing around the world. Surveys show that over 1 billion people in the world harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Close to 50% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world, and 2/3 of the world's population has never heard of the Holocaust or believe the historic accounts of it are inaccurate. Don't let yourself be manipulated by evil people with a wicked agenda. When the self-serving villains are in control, good people from all religions suffer. Muslims, Christians, and all people of conscience should stand proudly and show respect for a country that gives so much to the world in so many ways. Do your part, do your research, and do what you can to make a difference. Because what happens in Israel does affect us all. This is not just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. This is a problem for all humanity, for each and every one of us who believe in freedom and human rights. Learn more about what you can do at pjtn.org. You know, speaking of this cultural battle with BDS, the one group that seems to be most affected or being targeted toward is our millennials.
You know, my heart goes out. They are just being so misguided. Mm-hmm. And, you know, God forbid they prevail in any way, and the millennials have any small part in this. I mean, it's a tragedy for the generation. They have to be educated. We have to go on offense. We have to get them looking at the BDS movement, the cultural BDS campaign, with a critical eye.
What is the response from the overall entertainment industry with regards to the work that you're doing?
Well, I must say that the support has been tremendous. I get a lot of support within the industry, whether or not people are particularly champions of Israel. They just don't like the whole idea of third-party political activists trying to interfere with the artists' careers.
So, you know, there's a lot of confusion surrounding the BDS, or the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, especially among the young people.
Yes.
They don't quite understand what it is and what it isn't. Explain.
Well, you're absolutely right. And in fact, not just among young people, but absolutely about young people. So here's something the way I like to make it very clear. I like to talk about what it is and what it is not. The cultural boycott campaign against Israel is not a peace movement. It is a political movement. It's not about reconciliation. In fact, it stirs up conflict. It is not about cultural exchange. It's about censorship and thought control. And it's not about educating. It's about intimidating. And it's not an artist or really even a Palestinian-based campaign. It's much more European and UK in terms of its foundation. And it is absolutely not pro-Palestinian. It is anti-Israel.
Lana, I've so enjoyed this interview with you.
Thank you.
It's
Me
been very
too.
enlightening, and it's been inspiring and encouraging as well. But there's a lot of work to do. Well, that's our program for today, and I want you to know we appreciate your support. The time to take a stand is now. Be a leader in your community and in your church. One person can make a difference. Get involved with and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Call your senators, congressmen. Let your elected leaders hear from you. Visit our website to learn more. Sign up to receive free action alerts and order our films to share with family and friends. Please encourage everyone you know to tune in and become informed. If you're interested in starting a local PJTN chapter to combat anti-Semitism in your community, please contact us at info@pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. We'll see you next time on Focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020.
Anti-Semitism has reached epic proportions, and Israel is now surrounded by nations who seek its destruction. For Israel to lose just one battle would mean losing everything. As Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and Israel. PJTN needs your help to reach more Christians with this urgent message. Please visit our website to become a member today and order our award-winning documentaries. You must decide that you won't be silent. Sign up now at pjtn.org. God bless you, and thank you for your support and prayers. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.